Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome to Reframe Mindset Podcast. My name is Carlson Brooks, and on this episode, I talk about, I guess, the 40 of home ownership. And this topic is actually kind of relevant going forward, and it's what it called. There's a difference between doing it and doing it right, but both are relevant. Both are relevant. So what do I mean by that? Um, because there's a cost for inaction. So the the boom, yeah, back in the early time, early time before, just before I reach this part, the podcast, that's why I usually watch videos and people be like, "Oh my God, you want to be 80 and all this, regret not doing anything and all these stuff and all this and the debit and all these stuff, regret not accomplish all these stuff." And these are stuff that they actually see when out there. So when they just leave university, are this thing that you actually live if you actually go to high school, and what happens that some of your good friends matriculate to university while you're out there, so you'll be like, oh, boom. So what happens is that if you left university, what will happen is that you see the results so far after high school course you actually left behind, and it's the same thing from those days when they were down. But what happens is that now you experience those days when you are down. Now what happens is that when you come out in the adult world now, the high school girls have one up on you and stuff like that, because what happens is that those days momentum is something. So that's the reason why I say that there's a reality where we'll be like, okay, the episode we're talking about, there's a market for everything. There's a market for everything. It, m- my situation is my situation, but there's the reality of the person in my ear that actually coming and actually just still fully going to his academic career, fully going to his academic career and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, it's not impossible to reach that spot, but it's something I realize something that sometimes things happen for you to actually change the game. Be like, okay, what if everybody was all this was winning? But it would be fun and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, the dynamic of things happening randomly actually kind of just change up certain stuff to make things make um things that is less boring seems less boring. I guess maybe that's the reason why a podcast can get you interested in this thing where be like, okay, that's the thing where be like, okay, my doing my degree and stuff like that, one of the career paths was basically going out and teaching and stuff like that. Not teaching and stuff, but going to university and stuff, I then with my interest, just kind of expand what is possible. Make what seems boring, which is that thing about the science stuff or stuff like that. It's actually it's a very slow process. It's not fast or anything like that. It's very slow, and you have to actually follow the rules and all this. You have to follow the stuff. So it can be actually very boring, very long, like boom, in the universities and stuff like that. And that's the thing where we like when I actually reach that level of PhD and all these stuff level, what you're gonna realize is that sometimes the lecturing is basically a way to pass their time. That's what actually see that and that level. Right? Coming and be like, oh my god, first PhD. Come in and teach a course and be like, oh my god, bro. This is when actually look at it, it come like this is just a psychic tour, and actually, what happens is that when she reach a level now where be like the stuff that she's actually doing taking so long, like bro, you just pass now the knowledge, just pass the time and stuff like that. Meanwhile, so and what do I mean by that? We'll be like, oh, when I reach that level, when I reach that PhD and stuff like that level, and talking to professors and stuff like that with third stuff, um, we actually get a BSC and stuff like that, they actually appreciate the fact the BSC actually appreciate the fact that oh they are just they are professor with 30 and publication and all these stuff. Because what happens is that you you're going to go on a journey to see how to actually get one. Get one. And then what happens is that once you get one, each of the once you about publication and stuff like that, once you get it, it's that's yours. It's like a copyright and stuff like that. It's yours. And it's like, okay, that's your publication. Future publication gonna reference you know. It's like okay, gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna use this now. And then what happens that once that's in stone, you basically can't even use it again because like it's in the world now. It's like that thing where be like, okay, they're doing as relativity. Like, oh he proved it. I mean this is still all this but what happens is that since he proved it, you basically have no use anymore. It's like okay, it's in the universe now, you have to try to find something different. And stuff like that because you can't be only the one trick pony. You can't be just only the one trick pony and all this stuff. So that's the thing where be like, okay, yo. That's the reason why I guess back in Einstein time and stuff like that, in 2025 all this praising him because yo those stuff. So just to get one was the thing. And what happens that boom, in my time growing up, I thought that to the professor and stuff like that, having 30 and all these stuff. And it's like, in art, growing up in my time, be like, oh, with the prodigies and stuff like that. It's not. That is not something to actually appreciate until you're in a low point, where be like low point, like the adult world, where be like, oh my god, things are actually not going the way that you think due to your arrogance or whatever. Like things are actually oh, this not going your way. They'll be like, oh, you actually have to become an adult now. Like, all these fun and stuff. I think all those fun and stuff will be like, oh my god, you like joke about and so actually. And then not only that, once you actually get up and be like, oh yeah, we actually have to get up and we actually have to keep on being it. It can't not be it and stuff like that. That's what read when I talk about careers and stuff like that. But be like, okay. You build a standard and sometimes you're out there so you see me out there so slacking off or stuff like that. Where I actually build somewhere where at least even my standard amount is so keeping it somewhere, keeping the momentum somewhere because what happens just like the unemployment they talk about retirement episode about retirement actually send the other stuff like that. Even though you out there so actually progressing, I remember the days that you were unemployed and stuff like that. It's good to take a retreat when you know 'cause it doesn't make sense you're out there to go and flop on the biggest stage. And you out there so they don't have a job and all that stuff. Then they go and you flop on the biggest stage and you're like, oh wow. No, you out there, so you flop on the stage, and then the recovery from the worst thing is not having the opportunity. Is having the opportunity then flop on the biggest stage. Like the comeback from that is a long comeback, and I episode talk about depression, all these stuff. Those stuff is like a long comeback. Like failure is a long comeback. It's not easy. And the bigger you go, higher you go, the higher the risk of failure and stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, no, you have to actually mean, and this I think that comes with that. I think about adulthood and we're like, oh yeah, you have the basic stuff. After this, so coming out, let's leave university and stuff like that. But oh, getting a job, the basic chit chat of getting a job and all these stuff. But actually come out if you actually come out from university and stuff like that, your thing is not actually increasing your career. That's the difference now. About getting a job and all this stuff. You're out there so first breaking a cycle or stuff like that. You're out there so looking to create a career. You're coming from a place when people out there talking about getting a job, call center, all this stuff, which is not that thing, those things I gonna realize when actually reach this level. At some point these things were futuristic stuff. Just like for example, I'm talking about using, for example, sugar or stuff like that, and then all of a sudden they're gonna see me get richer and be like, oh my god, I don't use sugar anymore or stuff like that. It doesn't neglect the fact that back in the days, Asukar sugar there's a reason why when I see me go, I just like the stove and all these stuff. When you see me out there, so using e- electric stove or stuff like that, I be like, oh my god, are you using only rice cooker and all these stuff? I be like, okay, why are you doing that? There's a reason why you upgrade from that because yo, convenient. The things demand for that. It doesn't neglect the fact that those days were the days. Those days were relevant. It's just that okay, yo, when we actually move on those days, yeah, yeah. We don't want to go. We don't want to go back. What happens. It's good to know those days. It's good to know those days. To know that okay, when we actually move from those days, yeah, we fully move from those days. And that's when we're like, okay, it's good to know your past, good to know your history so that you don't repeat it. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense to go and just keep on living the past, bro. It doesn't make no sense to actually going on and keep on living the past. Because what happens that but there's lessons there. The lessons there. So the thing about it is that the better you're able to actually move from the history to the present is good, but at the same time it doesn't mean that you must always neglect it and stuff like that. Because what happens is that boom, like yo, there's for the money people, there's a coming in looking for this to make money and stuff like that. Coming in and be like, oh, what if there's a recession? What if there's a recession and stuff like that? The ways of the old, you will not know the ways of the old and crack under recession pressure. You'll be like, oh my god, I'm using rice cooker and all these stuff. Then all of a sudden, boom bang, quick, a whole electricity company goes bankrupt. And it's like, oh my god, bro, what the hell am I gonna do? Half the population will just starve to death. And be like, oh wow, yeah, because what happens is that we did actually learn the lessons from the old. We didn't know how to actually survive in and stuff like that. So what happens is that when we actually learn to survive and stuff like that, we be like another lesson is okay, say okay, we learn this and we survive. So we write this down and these are the answers. So yo, future generation will never go through this again. These are just funny stories now. There's a talk and stuff like that. Like and those are other things called proverbs. Proverbs are actually read stuff what happened and be like, okay, yeah, we actually went through that to say, yeah, we ain't going through that again. We ideally don't want to go through that again. We just passing these down knowledge down in different ways now to remind you that yeah, you usually go through this, but we actually don't want to go through this again because yo, if you actually have to go through this again, like it could be an extinction event, level event. Where like yeah, so that's the thing where like in adult world, even though sometimes I'm lazy and stuff like that, I have to actually come in and put in work to actually push the thing because yo, work too hard to actually not go back. Yeah. And sometimes it actually go back to those days and be like, yeah, yeah. That will actually snap you out of your laziness to be like, oh yeah, we actually go back to the primitive days. And that thing about retirement and stuff like that, we actually leave the work and you coming home for a while and you see the light going away and stuff like that. You're like, oh my god. No, actually I remember all these stuff that why I'm actually going out and doing this stuff. Oh, I had the like on and stuff like that. But at the same time, you don't know the answers yet, but you actually know what you're working for. So back to the episode is that there's a difference between doing something and doing something right, and both are relevant in the sense that you have to actually do something before you know it's either right or wrong. So the boom with the mesh and stuff like that. He'll be talking about how the mesh actually come in and solve the chicken problem and stuff like that and all these stuff. Like, oh my god, I can use this now for so much reason and all these stuff. And what happens is that it was very convenient for one door. It was actually perfectly fit for one door, but it actually it wasn't fit for the next doors. It actually could be put up and all these stuff. It could actually work and stuff like that. And that's the thing one I say compound formula or something and all this stuff, we actually come in and be like, okay, yes, we found the answer to the problem and all this stuff. And this is the thing where we be like, oh, compound interest and stuff like that. The answer that we actually got in year five or year six may last like a year or two. Then you see we get rid of it because what happens that we found the better solution. But this is the best solution given us our reality. And what is our reality? Sometimes we have fears, sometimes we be like, oh, you're coming from and be like, oh my god, I don't want to kill dogs and stuff like that. Let me just find out which actually just prevent them and stuff like that. And they realize, okay, now we have to rationalize our stuff. I will find better place for them and all these stuff. All these things, all these stuff are rationalized. We'll be like, oh, you some solutions is the most is the best solution given the situation to say, yeah, um, this is a solution we're gonna use this year. This is a solution we're gonna use this year to say, okay, yeah, and just to actually say, okay, give us time to properly, because what happens that yo, there's a community property and all this stuff. Say, I say, come from a company or something, our Steelers or whatever. It's hard to actually go to go the right, and that's when you always be like, oh, Jesus didn't come for sinners and all this stuff. You'll be like, okay, they ain't come for the good, bro. If we are good, he would need to even come here and stuff like that. So what happens like coming from family or something. So what means that when you're actually doing it, going the right way, you're out there, so have to um it's not going to be easy where you be like, oh, okay, no, you have to actually come to good rationalization to why you're always doing the right. And it's like it have to make sense. And like what happens that it gets better. Just like yo, there's a year we got honestly maybe like, oh, so that's the thing, maybe like, oh, some of the solutions that you actually come to is based upon your peers or recognition as like what happens that if you go to university like me, you tend to actually think about doing stuff more rationally. That's the reason why you have things like prison reform. When you go to the university level or stuff like you talk about prison reform or stuff like that. If you didn't go to university and stuff like that, you would have think about stuff like jungle justice, the stuff, jungle justice and all these stuff. That's the difference. We'll be like, oh, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or you're or whatever is wrong. It's working. It just what happens that um you're there's a difference between doing it and doing it right. And be like, okay, some certain stuff when I actually reach a higher level, certain stuff it is supposed to be done, but you can't, you can't. It's hard for you to. For one, it's actually hard for you to do it. That's the first thing. That's actually the first thing. Maybe like, oh, it's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. That was the thing. Maybe like, oh, if it was easy, everybody would do it. That's the first thing. But once actually everybody actually do it, the next thing is actually doing it right. When actually do it right now, they actually do it consistently. So that's the thing with the mesh thing. We'll be like, okay, it actually see that it actually solved the chicken problem, actually solved the problem, and all these stuff. But once I know that actually you actually solved the problem and stuff like that, I have to actually go out and say if okay, I have to actually go out and buy the right thing. And that's the thing, going on the family and stuff like that. Be like, okay. Sometimes we buy stuff and it solve the problem. Solve the problem. But a new level is actually coming out and buying the right stuff, tailor made for the okay, we'll be like, yeah. A home is one thing to build a home to say, okay, yeah. And this is a new level going to the fourth year compared to sixth year and stuff like that. You can compare a person 40 year home ownership to a person 80 years or all these stuff. They'll be like, okay, this level I am at is actually just out there so keeping the home. You have people is renovating and all these stuff. I don't remember the days we were just trying to secure the home and all these stuff. Next level now will be like, okay, well, there's next house will say, oh, there's a renovating and all these stuff and all these things. And then, yeah, but we were at the phase where I was trying to afford to even do it to actually be able to actually do it. Once we're coming from room and all these stuff and that. So the thing is actually be able to afford it. Then you can actually when you actually afford it now, then you actually can do the right stuff. Or so what happens that you actually when you actually afford it and stuff like that, each level you're going, this is facing problems. You're this facing problems where be like, okay, this problem this a face or this a facing. And what happens is that sometimes you actually go in and buy a solution. And, okay, the solution solve the problem. The solution solve the problem. And it's like, okay, because it solved the problem so well, I bought more of it and I'm gonna put it all over the home now. That it solved all the problem. I'm gonna realize that okay, yeah, it worked one spot. It worked, the solution worked one spot, but it didn't work everywhere. But you know that it works. I think it works another problem. Be like, oh yeah, it works one spot, but now we have to actually tailor made every single thing for each spot. That's the new level and stuff like that. And just knowing that, that's the thing about this episode. Just knowing that, say, okay, we're gonna tailor made. Doesn't mean that we can afford it. But that's the thing where we're like, okay, now we know that it works. It works. It's just that we have to try. Next thing now we'll be like, okay, next thing I'll go and measure home, buy the right things, and measure the measure stuff. Tailor made this or that for this and all these stuff. That basically we have to actually do. We're like, oh, we have to go and tailor make all these stuff for the person and all these stuff because we actually know that it works. Now we actually have to come in and make it work for each use case, each of the various situations. I'm like, okay, and then what after time it becomes natural. After time it becomes natural. I'm like, okay, now I know that this work. Then next thing I'm gonna do, you're gonna see me go out and be like, okay, our whoppings that you're gonna see me in the 50 or 60 year, be like, okay, I have this issue, and I know that this would be the best solution. Let me just see how many places I'm having this issue. Going out and see that okay, now I have to see and you just get this thing for this and that. And be like, okay, boom, boom bang quick. You're out there so buying the solution in bulk and it be real. I solve the problem real quick and be like, okay, yeah. And then what happens that the solution have a shorter shelf life in the sense that yo, there's to solve the problem. And us go out and be like, boom, yo, let's give you the problem. And be like, okay, yeah. What happens that my 50 year my 78th year home ownership problem solved. And it's like, okay, you're in your fourth year or stuff or stuff like that you'll be like, okay, this solution will actually help will actually help you in the future. It's gonna help you in the future. Like, oh wow. It's gonna help you and all these stuff. And be like, okay, it's gonna help you in year four or year one or stuff like that. And be like, okay, yeah. I wish I knew this last year and all these stuff. Just doing that actually free up the upcoming to do something else. I'd be like, okay, I know stuff. I just save family money. Be like, okay, yeah, come in and be like, yeah, we know this. we experienced this in this house this year. So be like, okay, yeah, we're coming to this house. Be like, yeah. Now we know that all these stuff gonna happen, bro. I know. So that's why actually come in and be like, you have a home. Yeah, there's a difference between a home and a good home. Be like, okay, a home and a good home. And be like, they come in and see everything, come and be like, oh, how the hell this home was actually survived this season when actually different season. How happens that we actually was building it, we were actually always thinking about it, these stuff. What happens that we experience these stuff somewhere and be like, instead of being reactive, we actually try to be proactive. And it's like, oh wow, now you realize that most of the problem out there, we don't even face. Most of the problem we don't even face it because we out there so invest in the future and be like, oh wow. Yeah, so that's the thing where I be like, yo, most most of the things you out there. So that's it. So that basic essence of this episode. We'll be like, oh, it's one thing to actually do it. The next thing is to do it right. So when you actually do it now, you actually know that okay, it works. It works. Now the next thing now is to actually go out and do it right. Actually do it right and be like, now we have to tailor made this and that and all these stuff. And all these stuff. And what happens is that the first thing is you acknowledging that the reality. Say, okay, first we have to actually do it, then do it right. Do it to actually get the problem and stuff like that. Then you never know, you reach a level unless you just come in and you're just constantly just doing it right. And you're like, okay. But don't forget the fact that okay, we first have to actually do it first. It doesn't make no sense. You know what they're saying this. That's thinking about the part, but actually listening to this podcast and stuff like. I was in the spectator phase once, so all this was listening and be like, "Oh my god, bro! Look at all these people and all these stuff." And you see those faces, then you actually see me out there attempting it. Then you see me actually out there doing it, and what happens that that's the thing. And be like, "Oh, you saw me in the spectator phase, out there commenting and be like, oh yeah, yeah." Look at all those people, bro. Look at all those. Then you have to reach a point where you be like, yeah, let me just attempt it and all this. And be like, oh, okay, just put the hat in there. I think about it, bro. There's no drawback. Through my experience, there's no drawback in trying. If you're there to fail, you fail on your own. They say nobody cares. And if you succeed, it doesn't matter. That's the thing. Sometimes it doesn't matter to who you matter with. You can realize. I think where be like, okay, I have this group of community and stuff like that. It didn't become relevant until I feel. If I was passing all these stuff, if I was passing on all these stuff, you would just see me out this. You wouldn't even hear. You wouldn't even hear about the podcast and all this stuff. You just hear me on the top of the field and all this stuff. You would even know me. All this. You just see me out this on the top of the field, all the things right. What happens is that the failure now, the failures actually now come in and make okay, yeah, now we have to find a different way now. Now we actually have come out and find a different formula now and all these stuff. It makes you have to be more agile and be more ingenuitive and all these stuff. It makes you have to actually think. And then now you actually come in all those failures, all those things and stuff like that. It actually makes you when you actually become the person, be like, oh yeah, these are the stuff that actually come in. We actually had to do. Like, oh yeah, that's the thing about actually when you actually see the product. These are all the phases that they actually go through. But the customer doesn't see that. Customer, the customer doesn't see the spectator phase when you're out there, so going out and be like, um, judging and be like, see the person that are actually doing it and be like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, is it? How is that doing it? They didn't see that. They didn't see that piece. They just see the product and be like, oh my god, it's good or bad and all this stuff. And commenting and all this. But they don't see those parts. They don't see the part no. These are stuff that this work on a podcast now. And then boom by the time it comes out and all this stuff, you see things change and be like, oh my god, they didn't even see that part again. They just see a different part. They just see and like, oh my god, no, they don't just commenting and all this stuff. They don't see the product. They don't see what actually was going through to actually get this episode done. They just see what happens and then boom, you see me coming out and reinvest and all these stuff. Like, oh my god. And it's like, it's like, nah, no, no, just to see the winning and all this stuff. So that's the thing where we're like, oh, first you have to actually do it and then actually do it right and all this stuff. And when I actually do it right, be like, yo, when I reach a point, you can actually start skip the phase of just doing it and then just do it right. Like, oh, we can skip that phase of doing it and just keep on just do it right because that becomes a luxury. But at the same time, don't forget that part. Because what happens is that when you actually forget to do it, I don't want to take this advice. There's a reason why I actually use advice with with the mesh and stuff like that. Because certain situation may be wrong. Like, oh, you do it, and then oh, let's never find a solution. No, it's actually it's actually like okay, let's do it. It's important actually try to start it and all these stuff. When I start something, I actually get it done. Right, get this something working and stuff like that. Okay, we actually get it working. We actually get it working. Now to actually get it work right, we'll be like, okay, we actually do this for real now. We're like, now we're gonna actually do it. We're like, oh wow, it's actually possible to do this stuff now. Now we're gonna actually do it for real now. It's like, this is a new level. And what happens that with everything, you when you do it right, it can be and it can be done better. It can be done better and all these stuff. So if you do it right, you also can do it better. And then boom, that and stuff like until I reach a limit. I'm like, yeah, this is the this is it, this is it now. Can do a couple tweak and all this, but we found the answer. We found what we were actually coming to buy and all this. But it's like but you know, you can do it better until you feel like, oh yeah, this was what we were actually finding, looking for. And it's like, cool. Then you go in and purchase and I'm like, finished now. But that's the thing about it. The stuff. First you do it and be like, okay, now we're also trying to do it right. We'll be like, oh, the first thing is actually just prove the concept. I'm like, oh yeah, we actually was trying to do this. Now we get to accomplish. No, to actually do it now and be like, do it right. And be like, okay, we actually do it right now and be like, okay, no, we can do it, look at tweak and do it better and all this up to reach a point like, yeah, this is the best that we not even that no, not the fact that that's the best we can do. It's just that okay, this is relevant now. Then I see some futuristic people coming by, yeah, you can actually change this up, or change this up. Like, yeah. But um at that point you reach a point where like, do you just can cruise control. Or just put in the work you can actually cruise control until I get some idea to change up. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna change this up really quick. So that's basically it for this episode. Thank you for listening and look forward for the next episode. I'll be like, and that's the thing, yeah, yeah. That's the thing for this. That's it for this episode.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page Reframing Mindset Podcast or on Twitter @ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.